We're back at it and we continue to discuss both the Computer Misuse Act. Thank you for keeping it smart 24 TV. I'm still with Brighton Abaho, who is a programs associate from SEPA, Uganda, and we are trying to break down a little bit more of the Computer Misuse Law, which was initially the Computer Misuse Act, and it was a bill that was tabled in Parliament and started to by the President last week. And of course it has various provisions, of which we've broken down some, and then also highlighted on how unfavorable they may seem. And currently now, we need to look at implementation. But before the implementation, penalties. Let's look at these penalties. The penalties here show that if one is found guilty, you're either going to prison for 7 years or pay 15 million Ugandan shillings, or either way, face the two. Pay 15 million Ugandan shillings and as well serve 7 years in prison. These penalties, was that part of the discussions you had when it was still a bill before the committee?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll first read in verbatim. Okay. For example, which is now section 26C, subsection 2. A person who contravenes subsection A commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 750 currency points or imprisonment not exceeding 7 years or both.
Okay.
750 currency points are equivalent to 15 million. So one of the things that I would like to before, when we were appearing before the committee, we actually told the committee that these punitive provisions in the law that is now an act are excessive and are overly harsh.
Okay.
We requested the committee to consider reducing these reducing the penalties. Especially, we talked about aspect of the 750 currency points. Actually, our suggestion was, can we at least reduce it to 500 currency points?
Okay.
But the committee did not consider that recommendation, and as a matter of fact, this was maintained at the second reading and then third reading, and then we are seeing this law being assented to and becoming law. So where the problem is going to come from is that as you're enforcing it, 15 million is actually a lot of money. In as far as the committee, the report from the majority was actually saying that 15 million is going to be a deterrent. But we, in our presentation, we said that it should not be about being deterrent or not, but we need to also look at the effect of such a penalty, because like I've said, these provisions are excessive and are overly harsh. So there was need for the committee to actually consider having these penalties reduced. Like I've said, one of our recommendations was to have the 750 currency points reduced to 500 currency points at least, such that in an event that someone is convicted, at least the 500 currency points, which is equivalent to 10 million, which is also still a lot, probably it would still be I would not want to use the word understandable, but at least as compared to a fine of 15 million. And if you're to look at other legislations, let's talk about the Data Protection Act and other legislations. If you look at the penalties in those laws, you realize that this specific law brings about penalties that are harsh as compared to these other legislations. Because these other legislations you'll find are talking about something close to 150 currency points, 200.
Now here it's 15 million for
Here it is 15 million.
someone's own opinion.
Absolutely. Which we believe that it is very unfortunate.
Okay.
And like I've said, excessive and remains overly harsh.
Okay. Speaking of implementation, we are limiting the expression of personal opinions here. And that is something that we've come to realize. And now we're supposed to make peace with it. Simply because you have to be very, very vigilant and very specific with the words you use now. Now, at the end of the day, the question would be, how is this going to be implemented in the long run to ensure that, well, Ugandans follow the law, and what should the Ugandans do, by the way, to ensure that they don't go beyond their limits?
Thank you very much. From the day when the president assented to this bill that became an act, it is now law. So its implementation has since started or commenced. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that needs to be done is that, one, I know very many people might say that, you see, I did this because I was not aware. I didn't know. But we also know that ignorance of the law is not a defense. So in implementation of this law, the different stakeholders, especially the line ministry, which is the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, should be able to popularize this document, this specific law, such that people who are beyond Kampala, actually get to know about the provisions of this law, given the fact that it is already signed into law and it is an act. Also, the different civil society organizations also have a role to play in making sure that people can actually go ahead and get to know about this specific law. This means that our different stakeholders, the different civil society organizations, they need to consider going to the different regions, different places, and educating the people about this specific law, such that the people are not caught off guard. And also, there is also something that needs to be done by the public interest litigants.
Okay.
For example, we are very much aware that Norman Tumhimbise and others have already filed a petition for the Constitutional Court.
Okay. So,
and we're also very much aware that the Uganda Law Society is also preparing the same, as if I'm to go by the words of the current president of the Law Society, Bernard Owundo, that the Law Society is planning to also file a petition in regard to this law. So if probably a petition is filed and then we get to have the Constitutional Court, consider the petitions, and then probably, one or the other, we can have the Constitutional Court probably, strike out this very law that is now bothering many Ugandans, especially those who are involved in the use of computers and mobile phones, and also those that are more involved in the use of social media. So the moment we get probably these petitions, maybe we can have the Constitutional Court strike out some of these provisions, and then maybe. But in the long run, since it is already a law, people need to read and understand what this law means. Okay. And also, like I've said, the line ministry needs it should be able to do something such that the people are able to understand the provisions of this law, such that they are not caught off guard.
Now, speaking of the fact that with an estimation that Ugandans lose close to 15 billion, and that's a very huge amount of money due to cybercrime, how will this law prevent this particular, how will it control these laws? Because this is a very huge sum of money, and one would seek to understand Will this law help us curb such financial crimes?
Thank you very much. In the analysis, actually in our presentation before the committee, we actually told the committee that the provisions that were passed, these provisions that were passed, were not in any way addressing the key cyber crimes that we are having as a country, that we are facing, especially given the aspects of emerging technological challenges that we are having. So our understanding was that the amendment of the Computer Misuse Act should have actually looked at the emerging technological challenges that we are saying, that we are facing as a country. Like you've already noted, a lot of money is being lost by Ugandans through these cyber crimes. And it's very unfortunate that whereas the law should have candidly looked at those issues, emerging, like I've said, the emerging technological challenges and the very many cyber crimes, the law did not focus on those things, which I personally believe that these are things that should have been the focus, because maybe in the end of it all, it would have prevented us from losing some of this money that most of Ugandans are actually losing. So, like I've already said, if there is a way that we can actually be able to address some of those challenges, another amendment, because Parliament still has a role in as far as reviewing these laws are concerned. Probably we can, in the next, probably an amendment can also come through, and then we have some of these things that were left out be considered. For example, I will talk about some of these things. Yes, whereas cyber harassment is provided for in the Principal Act, but with the different aspects of cyber trolling and all these targets that are always on women, we thought that probably the amendment would focus on some of these things. And then also the aspect of how money is being lost digitally. But very unfortunately, you see, the other time we had BLQ.
Just recently here.
Just recently.
And Ugandans lost lots of money.
Very many Ugandans lost a lot of money in BLQ. We thought probably this, maybe some of these things should have been addressed so that Ugandans can stop losing out money but by and large, the law, though it was passed and then assented to by the president, does not address the challenges, the cybercrime challenges that we are facing as a country. And probably, like I've said in our presentation at Center for Policy Analysis before the committee, we had hoped that probably the committee would consider some of those things and maybe refocus on these challenges, unlike focusing on these other provisions, hate speech, which some of them, like I've said, are ambiguous and probably not very clear.
All right. And when you look at the past decade, Africa is being shaped around this internet space, by the way, and with innovations coming up every other year, we are looking at people tapping into the economic space, rather using now e-commerce trends. That is actually now the way forward. You've mentioned that the law seemingly does not meet up to the standards that we expected. For example, solving financial situations or financial crimes. For example, case in point, you've used the BLQ, but then we've got a lot of fraud that happens online. And this takes me back to understanding, amongst the provisions you had presented before the committee, what then were your thoughts on the matters to do with the financial crimes in the country?
Yes, whereas because we have seen internet, its use continue to be very critical in our society. For example, you have seen the other day when was an internet shutdown, people complaining. A lot of issues people losing a lot of money simply because of an internet shutdown. These the aspects of financial, the financial crimes, the crimes that are happening in as far as financial cyber crimes are concerned.
Okay.
They are very key, and as a country, it is something that we need to pay attention to.
Okay.
I know maybe one of the things would be that the Computer Misuse Act would not specifically get to, to address some of these things. But we, like you've asked in our presentation, we thought that maybe with the mandate and consideration of the committee, we would be able to have this reconsidered, such that the bill is able to cover some of these things, these issues that we believe were not addressed in the bill before it was passed into the law.
Okay.
And I think moving forward, for us to be able to address some of these issues that we are facing, and of course this goes back to our institutions. Of course, when you talk about issues like financial, of course there is a very big role by Bank of Uganda, also a very big role by the different entities such as the different entities in the banking sector to ensure that we are able to come and address these things. And I believe we can, the solution is to go back and probably bring back our suggestions, what we believe that can actually go in as far as addressing some of these things. Because as it stands right now, we shall not be able to address these issues in the current law. So, one, we need to petition Parliament,
okay,
to have a reconsideration on how we can be able to solve some of these things in as far as money that is being lost online is concerned, because it is becoming a very big challenge, especially with these telecommunication companies. Many people have lost money, and we have not yet found a solution. And I believe that we need to go back and probably have a review of our laws in as far as on how we can be able to protect our people from losing money digitally and online.
Okay. And of course, as we are summing up with our discussion, what do you suggest, lastly now, should be done by government in your parting shots?
Yes.
One, because you've said not all the organizations that present before committees in Parliament are considered, or most of the provisions that you people present are sometimes neglected and all that. But what then should the policy makers, when creating room for these laws, consider? Ebli, what are those things that they should consider? In just 2 minutes as we're winding up.
Oh, thank you very much. Especially, first of all, in aspects of legislation, the public has a role to play. That's why when a bill is referred to a committee, the public, through the different institutions and organizations, are allowed to come and make presentations before the committee. I think maybe we always need to make great awareness for people beyond Kampala, because these are some of the people that are actually affected by some of these laws and policies that are actually made, for them to be part of. For example, had we in the first place, for example, having such a bill, when it was a bill, translated into the different languages for people to understand, maybe it would have been such that they can be able to. Then also, Parliament as an institution needs to widen the scope of consultation. Probably should consider taking it out of the precincts of Parliament, so that people up country can also get to probably make their submissions on some of these laws and these policies. Because it is not just, yes, we understand that it is representatively, yes, it is, but probably we would also need to see people from up country and other and the different parts of this country being able to make a contribution. And like I've said, if we are able to also look at, make sure that some of these bills, before they are passed, are translated so that people can understand. And also, in what I had said, the ministry, now that the law is already passed, the line ministry and the different stakeholders have a role to play. For example, ensuring that such a law is translated in the different languages for people to understand, so that they can read. Those who do not understand English can read and understand the provisions, so that they are not caught off guard.
All right. Many thanks for joining us, and very insightful of your talking points this morning. And that is Brighton Abaho, who is a Programs Associate Lawyer still with the Center for Policy Analysis, that is SEPA, Uganda. He was taking us through the computer misuse law, breaking down a little bit of the provisions as well, and seeing how we can implement some of these provisions in the law, but also looking at how unfavorable were they throughout the process of scrutiny and all the sittings by the committee while presenting the bill before it became law. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko, this is Smart Means Business. After the break, we've got the SMB Insight. We have more from the on-ground discussions, and as well the SMB No Comment. Stick around for more. I'll be right back.